Hello everyone and welcome back to Alejandro HD. And today I thought I would talk about rap beefs and my top 5 rap beefs. This was not an easy list to condense down to 5, top 5. There's so many different um, styles and there's so many different arguments and there's so many different things that have happened in the course of however long hip hop has been alive. And today I just wanted to sort of dissect and get into a little bit of why I like, I suppose, like rap beefs. And I've just sort of plucked a few really well known, really famous rap beefs. Not necessarily my favourite, but some that I think are very important to the genre. So the first that I've picked out of the list is NWA versus Ice Cube. Now, to give you a bit of a backstory um, on rap beef, and then we'll get into to these guys, was that essentially when hip hop first was created in the the Bronx and so on, it was mainly you know a debate between the South Side Bronx and the East Side, the North Side, the West Side, whatever other side there was, and they would maybe release something in a club saying, "Oh yeah, we're better than you. We've got better things than you have," and then the guys would respond and so on. So that's kind of like the very vanilla, very basic beefs that came around in those days. Progressing on, of course, we had things here and there, but they were never anything serious until we had, well, in my opinion, until we had. I mean, people would probably debate that. Um, the first proper real beef that sort of blew the world apart in hip hop, and of course that was NWA versus Ice Cube. So NWA were the rap group, the West Side rap group, who were amazing, who just took the world by storm, who came out with so many things, so many songs, just paved the way for the thug and rebellious attitude, brought gangster rap into hip hop and changed it from this sort of half disco tech sort of songs, very clubby, very cool, to very sort of gritty and hard, and a lot of people didn't know what was coming. So yeah, so Ice Cube versus NWA. We all know the story. For those that don't, Ice Cube felt that he was sort of um, not getting paid enough for the different things. He was the head songwriter of the group, and people, and he wasn't. He felt like things weren't going his way, and he was just sort of generally just sort of not happy with how things were getting ran. Of course, that was between Easy E and Jerry Heller, the manager. So he quit the band, quit the group, the band, and he said, "Right, I'm going to go my own way. You guys do your own thing." And everything was fine for a little while, and then Dr. Dre in a line said something, and one of the songs said something like, "Oh yeah, we dropped Benedict Arnold, and we're making all the dough." Now, that was kind of like a quip, like a very funny throwaway, like, "Oh yeah, we don't need Ice Cube to make songs." And what I love about this is that Ice Cube just completely like took that and to heart and was like, "Nah, I'm not dealing with it. I'm not taking that. I'm not taking some guy calling me Benedict Arnold." So he just completely just ravished them, and he released No Vaseline, as we all know. And we know what come next. There was no retaliation from NWA. They knew that they were not going to come back to that. Like, and now No Vaseline was one of my favorite beef tracks of all time. To me, that really set the groundwork to what beef rap was. Now, I don't have Tupac and Biggie in this list. I know people are probably going to be like, "Why do you not have Tupac and Biggie in this?" That's a whole other thing. That for me, I'm just focusing on very specific beefs. So that was the first for me, and then of course Jay-Z and Nas. Now there was the whole dominance over Brooklyn, over New York. Who was a better rapper, and Nas was a wee bit more underground. Jay-Z was a bit more sort of commercialized, and I think that was really interesting because it came away from guys just poking fun at each other, maybe having a little bit of angst for whatever reason, like what we saw with NWA, to just full on like hatred for each other because of, you know, um, dominance in a specific area. Like Nas was very upset with Jay Z because he thought that he was trying to be too much like Biggie, and like, oh, you're not the king of New York and all this sort of thing. And I think that was really like a very different type of beef that we hadn't really seen before in rap music. Like it came from guys arguing about royalties, like NWA and Ice Cube, to like what it meant to be part of a city, and I thought that was really cool. So that was them, and then of course 50 Cent in the game. So that this is sort of coming in more to the early 2000s. 50 in the game, were good pals at one point, and then it all just went crazy. They fell out and things were said, but this in a way kind of takes us to a different realm. So the first two, there was like, you know, there was a reason Ice Cube and NWA were arguing because of royalties. Nas and Jay Z were arguing because of like, who was the king of the city, and then 50 Cent in the game were sort of more like, they were like just kind of taking shots at each other, but never really fully going in. I mean, there was like, there's little things here and there, but it was never like the extremities of Ice Cube, or the sort of, the hardiness of Nas and Jay Z. And I think this sort of brought us more into the millennial kind of diss, like, what we see these days compared to what we saw back in the 90s, and the late 90s and the late 80s and the early 90s. And it's a very like contrast, from what we came from to where we are now. And then of course Eminem, MGK. Now Eminem is beefed with pretty much every human being on the planet, but what I really enjoyed about this particular beef was that MGK did not have any fear to go at Eminem. I mean, he shouldn't have, but he did. But then, and things happen, and then, like, Rap Devil was okay. I mean, like, for its song, like, if Rap Devil was as any other artist, like, that would have been a really really hard hitting diss. And it was okay. There was a few punches in there, but the thing with Eminem is that he doesn't, like, you can't really sort of release a song and then not expect it to be dissected by this guy, and every line had been ripped apart. I mean, if you've heard Kill Shot, and it was just completely just destroyed everything. And for me, like, that was a really interesting beef, because again, it was very different from what we've heard from previously. It was like MGK was attacking Eminem, but it was more for like historical circumstances. Like, MGK said something in 2014 or 15 or wherever it was about, his daughter, and it took him a long Eminem took a long time to respond back to him in the Amazon the album, Kamikaze, and he replied with, this, when he said in the song, can't remember exactly which song it was. It may have been Greatest, when he was talking about MGK and how he shouldn't talk about Haley, and his daughter, and then MGK replied back to him with Rap Devil, and then Eminem replied back to him with Kill Shot, and then MGK changed music genre. So yeah, so that was a very interesting thing. And again, that was a completely, so these, every single rap beef that I've sort of collated in this list are all different. I mean, I could go on about different, West Coast, East Coast beefs, Tupac, Biggie, Snoop Dogg, Easy E. I could go on and on and on about everything, but like, this is just a very brief top five current beefs that I really find interesting. And then the last one was Stormzy versus Wiley, which is completely different. This is UK grime, and I really enjoyed this because this was a very different thing entirely. So, for those of you who know UK grime, I'm not entirely 100% on UK grime, to be quite honest with you, which is really interesting coming from me because I'm from the UK. But you know, Wiley got upset because of Stormzy's I can't speak, Wiley Flow song, um, which I thought was really good. And I think that maybe initially Stormzy was releasing Wiley Flow as a sense to, pay homage to the creator of grime. But Wiley wasn't very happy with that, and of course he released Idiot Skeg Bang Part 1. Uh, and then Stormzy replied with Disappointed, and then Part 2 came out from Wiley, and then um, Stormzy replied with Still Disappointed. So it was like Disappointed, then Still Disappointed, and then Wiley came out with Part 3. But I think by then the beef had sort of fizzled out. But grime is a very different kettle of fish altogether from American rap music. When an American rapper drops a beef on a guy or a rapper, there's like different things that need to be thought about, weeks, months even, of different, things that need to be written, and things that need to be said, and it's a lot more volatile out in the US. Whereas in the UK, it's when somebody sends for you, you have to reply back within a certain time frame, or it's going to get worse for you. So I think that it was a really old school send. Like Wiley, of course, being the guy he is, just throwing it all out there, and then Stormzy coming back with it, and then it was a really nice sort of 2007 2006 beef that we got in 2019 or 2020, and yeah, and of course we know from UK grime we've got guys like Chipmunk who just go off in one, and and Youngin and all these guys. So it's a very different dynamic. I think that UK grime is a very quick to reply. As much as is the nature of the UK. If somebody insults you, it doesn't take a second to reply back to the person. Whereas in the US, it's a bit more methodical, a bit more thought out, and that's what we saw with Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre and things like that. So with applying to Eazy-E and BG Knockout, Dre Style and all them. So it's a very different dynamic, and I think looking at both UK and US, you see a very different comparison and very different types of insults, and I think that's really cool. And those were my top five beefs, and I might get into more of these in the future, hopefully. Breaking down a lot more analysis in a lot more detail, because I like these things and I like talking about them. All right, see you in the next one. Cheers.